All right, let's dive into one of the biggest questions there is, really, the mystery of consciousness itself. And our journey today isn't going to start in some high tech lab or a university lecture hall. No, it starts in a place we all know, in the dead of night, in your own bed.
I mean, this is a terrifyingly common experience, right? That horrible state stuck between sleep and being awake, where your mind is totally alert, but your body is just completely paralyzed. For a few moments, you are literally trapped inside your own head. And a lot of the time, you feel like you have a terrifying companion in there with you. This is sleep paralysis.
But what if this whole nightmare isn't some paranormal event? What if it's actually a clue? A biological glitch that pulls back the curtain on the very machinery of how we experience reality itself. So let's start by taking a closer look at this so-called demon in the bedroom. Okay, so first things first, we really need to understand this phenomenon. I mean, it's something that has haunted people for centuries. It is so common that it has shaped folklore and myths all over the globe. And the symptoms are remarkably consistent no matter who you ask. You're conscious, but you can't move a muscle. You might see a dark figure lurking in the corner, feel a heavy weight on your chest that makes it hard to breathe. Maybe you hear buzzing or whispers, and the result is almost always just pure, absolute terror. What's absolutely fascinating is how all these different cultures have invented their own unique monsters to explain the exact same set of physical feelings. In Newfoundland, they call it the old hag. In Japan, it's a spirit called kanashibari. In the Arab world, it's a jinn. The stories change, but the core experience, the biological data, if you will, it's identical. It's like a universal human glitch. So, if it's not a demon, what is actually going on here? Well, the answer seems to lie in the weird borderlands of our sleep cycle. So, scientifically speaking, sleep paralysis is basically a brief mix-up, a timing error, where your brain wakes up before your body does. You get your awareness back while your body is still in that state of muscle paralysis. It's called atonia, which is totally normal during REM or dream sleep. It's just a glitch in the system. And this really highlights the key difference. See, in normal REM sleep, your brain is buzzing, your body is paralyzed so you don't go acting out your dreams, but you're unconscious. In sleep paralysis, the physical situation is exactly the same, but with one massive difference. You are awake. You are consciously aware of being trapped. And this simple little glitch forces us to confront the big mystery, right? We can explain the paralysis, sure, but what about the awareness itself? What is this I that's awake and completely terrified? I mean, how do we even begin to get a handle on that? Well, one of the most ambitious and, pretty controversial theories in modern neuroscience is trying to do exactly that. It's trying to move consciousness from the world of philosophy into the world of mathematics. It's called Integrated Information Theory, or IIT, and the core idea is pretty radical. It says that consciousness isn't some mysterious thing that just appears out of complexity. Instead, it's a fundamental property of any system that integrates information in a very specific way. The way IIT works is actually pretty clever. It works backward from the one thing we can all be absolutely sure of, that we are having a conscious experience. So it starts by listing the essential properties of that experience. Like, for example, that your experience right now is unified. You're not having two separate experiences at once. Then it figures out what physical properties a system must have in order to produce an experience with those qualities. And here's where it gets really wild. It proposes that the exact quantity of a system's consciousness can be measured with a number, and that number is called phi. So a complex human brain would have a very high phi. A thermostat, maybe a tiny little phi. And a rock would have 0 phi, no consciousness at all. Now, as you can probably imagine, a theory that claims it can mathematically measure something as personal as consciousness has kicked off a total firestorm of debate, and the arguments for and against it are just as fascinating as the theory itself. So on one hand, supporters say IIT explains things other theories just can't, like why the cerebellum, which is packed with neurons, doesn't seem to generate consciousness. And it's even being used to try and develop tools to assess awareness in coma patients. But on the other hand, critics argue the math is just impossibly complex for any real system, that its claims can't really be tested scientifically. And some have even gone so far as to call it pseudoscience.
You've got one of its biggest proponents, the famous neuroscientist Christoph Koch, who sees it as our best and maybe only real shot at cracking the code of consciousness. But then you have prominent thinkers like the philosopher John Searle, who argue that the biggest implication of IIT, this idea called panpsychism, that consciousness could be a property of lots of things, not just brains, well, he says it isn't even wrong. He says it's strictly meaningless. And that's the point where a lot of scientists just get off the bus. This whole debate forces us to ask an even more personal and, honestly, a pretty unsettling question. We're talking about measuring consciousness, but what about the thing we all assume is right at the center of it? The you who is having the experience. Think about it for a second. A sound happens over there, to your left. That feeling of over there implies that there's a right here where you are. But if consciousness is just a property of an information system, your brain, where exactly is that center? Let's use an analogy. In a dream, a monster could be chasing you from 50 feet away. It feels separate, it feels distant, but the entire dream, the monster, the space, the fear, all of it is all happening inside your mind. That feeling of separation is just part of the mental construction. So try this right now. Look for the experiencer. Look for the thing that's at the center of your vision, the listener that's behind your ears, the thinker of your thoughts. When you really truly search for this self, can you find anything there? Or do you just find more experiences, more thoughts, more sounds, more sensations? Maybe the best way to think about it is this. Consciousness is like a lake, and all of our experiences, sights, sounds, thoughts, they're like waves just appearing on the surface. The waves just happen. They don't need a central waver to coordinate them. And that feeling of being a self, an experiencer right at the center of it all, well, maybe that's just another wave, another appearance in consciousness. Which brings us right back to where we started, trapped in the dark. If consciousness can be measured with a number, and the self we feel so certain of is just an illusion, then who or what is actually experiencing the demon in the bedroom? It's a question that might just keep you up at night,